This is day 3 of the February 95 7-day retreat in Springwater. Amazing change this morning, waking up to a white world with all the shades of gray and brown and yellow. One question that was brought up: why sit quietly? And another one: this quietness is marvelous, can I bottle it up and take it home? Not just the quietness, but what unfolds in the quietness. Usually the question comes up closer to day 6, but in this retreat, several people have already asked it. And then this came up. Maybe we'll start with this. So many voices in this mind, or so many voices heard. I don't remember the examples that were given, if any were given. Do this, don't do this. I ought to do this. I can't do it. Conflicting voices, opposing voices, and then the questioner asked, and then who hears all of that? Are these all different sides of me? And then one side of me hearing all of that? Why complicate it and put an extra name on what is happening? Voices are heard, or sentences heard, perceived somehow. It's not clear at all what the mechanism for this is. I don't know whether anybody knows. How inner voices, don't do this, or go ahead. Tomorrow you can start not doing it. And then what is hearing that? What is saying it? What is this reading of the display in the mind? There's no answers to this as far as I know. People do send me articles here and there about the latest brain discoveries and research. I haven't read anything about this yet. And yet it is all observable. It is visible, palpable. Palpable, by that I mean feel the emotions that go with a certain thought. The thought may not even have registered, one has not heard it or perceived it, but the anxiety is there, cringing or tightening up. So the mind wants to have answers, make order out of chaos. And the way it has learned to make order out of chaos is by labeling things, explaining things, giving names to processes, descriptions, explanations. And yet, can we stick as bare bones as possible to what's happening, what is registered, what is perceived? Thoughts, first this thought, then that thought, then another thought, opposing both of them or agreeing with one of them. And the perception of all of that. We can give another name to it. We can say it's one constantly flowing stream of consciousness. Is that helpful? Sometimes a word is helpful in eliminating more complicated conceptions. One flow of consciousness may eliminate this quandary of how many me's are there, how many voices? And then on top of it, the one that perceives that is conscious of it. So does it help facilitate things to say it's one stream of consciousness flowing in flux all the time? Some thoughts obviously, palpably more powerful than others, dominating, squeezing others out, or saying just like teachers say, this is true, this is false. All registered or taped and playing, or programmed and playing in this organism, and not just individually but collectively. Obviously, very obviously, we affect each other with our thoughts, or we are affected by thoughts that we pick up, read, hear, media, books, newspapers, scriptures. We may adopt certain thoughts that agree with a system that's already established, or with a need or a longing. And it all takes place in one huge consciousness. It's not really divided into you and me, but that cannot be proven to anyone. It can only be discovered here, right now. Not in the future. Discovery is always here, right now. Here, now. Peep. Maybe it helps to have a unifying concept, because the mind may temporarily let up to try to figure this one out. It'll quickly want to figure out something else. So you could ask, well, how do you know this? How do you know that this is all one stream of consciousness, this voice and that voice? The fight among voices. Because it's all perceived freely. It can all be freely perceived or become transparent. Be transparent in a quiet being, quiet listening, quiet attending. Although I don't know physiologically what this quiet attending is, but it goes with a certain state of body-mind, which is permeated with quietness, stillness, and then things become quite crisply transparent. Thoughts and fights, domination. And that the fact that the process itself is going on. Because you can say, well, I'm conscious of all of this. I'm conscious of my thoughts. I wasn't before I came here, or to a much lesser degree, but now I'm really becoming conscious of it. If there wasn't consciousness of these opposing inner voices, one wouldn't be able to report them. So, being conscious of them is what? I don't know what it is. But my question, rather than what is it, and get an explanation for it, maybe a sort of an external explanation in terms of electrochemical processes, my interest is it not just consciousness of the voices, this is right, this is wrong, but awareness that this is going on? Do you see the difference? not just hearing these voices or these thoughts, reading them, but aware that these are thoughts. Inner tapes playing, or whichever word one wants to give to it. The words are flexible. Sort of a free space that sees what's going on within, and is not this total absorption in the content of the thoughts. You're good, you're bad. You're neither, you're both. But the fact that this is going on, and that it is thought, mostly coming out of conditioning, the way our parents or preceptors, friends, teachers, religious leaders, whoever, the books, the way they talked, the way they spoke and wrote, was deeply ingrained, deeply imprinted upon each new growing body-mind. We don't even know how much is brought along. Within sperm and egg, already all kinds of programs of thinking in certain ways. We know very little about this yet. So, awareness, if we use that word very carefully, it's not a thing. It is open space, freedom, clarity. Not the words, but the actuality of it. That reveals thoughts going on. And that is not drawn into thoughts. It just sees it as going on. All of this it's just sort of started here in a talk, or it started in a meeting, and it is unfolding. If you're not clear about it, if it's confusing, then let's bring it up in a meeting and look some more, alone and together. Because part of what is going on in a retreat like this is to make conscious, and beyond that to bring into awareness all these processes that go on in human beings like you and me and the rest of the world, and keep us so confused, so intolerant of each other or of ourselves, so defensive of ourselves and so aggressive toward others. So self-righteous, so clinging to what we think is the truth or the rightness of our own opinions. And with that, the wrongness of other opinions and the irreconcilability so often of my point of view and your point of view. Coming time and time again to this absurd conviction that by killing each other or fighting each other, we can resolve irreconcilability of positions. And to question into that in oneself. What are these seemingly irreconcilable ideas? I have a right to be angry, but I shouldn't be angry. It's bad to be angry. But yet it's good to express anger. All of these different feeling opinions. How to be with that? Other than with force, suppression, repression, punishment, guilt, annihilation, destructing. I'll find some ways of controlling my thoughts. And then the repressiveness and and lack of understanding in that. So how to approach this bundle of contradictions and confusion that is me? The pain that goes with it, the suffering, the sorrow, anguish. And spurts of explosions of violence. All observable in oneself. Because oneself, as it turns out upon patient inspection, represents all of humankind in one way or another. There's no need to go out and study others. It's all here in oneself, potentially or actually, changing from one day to another. The feelings, the emotions, the moods. How to deal with it, as word is so frequently used. How to deal with one's anger, one's sorrow, one's conflicts and contradictions, pains, fears. I'm not mentioning the joys because they're no problem. A joy is no problem. It's in the moment. And if it has really not become thought and memory yet, it comes and goes and leaves no trace. It doesn't demand anything. But thought, of course, comes in and says, how can I perpetuate this? Keep it. Repeat it. Then it becomes a problem. Because it's not possible. Thought cannot bring about the spontaneity of joy at this moment. It can only create, we're using these two words by definition, create pleasure, the pleasure of remembering, the pleasure of anticipating. That's thought created, memory created. So, how to deal with what is experienced as problems. And there's no one here who does not experience problems, pains, fear. Anxiety about the future. Fear at the thought of uncertainty. Maybe terror at the thought of not continuing. Usually the conditioned response which comes for most people at first is to think about it, to try to figure out our problem. Musing about it, pondering, obsessing as it is called these days. Round and round and round. And one may be conscious of this, but is there a deeper awareness of obsessing and wondering what to do about it and not knowing what to do about it, but seeing this turning, churning, treadmill, little wheel, a hamster trying to get out of what supposedly hamster has fun doing it. And will one understand for oneself, come to that understanding somehow or other, that figuring out a solution may not bring a solution. For certain problems, usually technical problems, figuring out is very appropriate. May bring solutions or answers. But our psychological problems, what's called spiritual problems, of wondering, what am I? Why am I here? Why was I born and have to die? Comes a point where thinking more about it is like too much food. Comes a certain nausea at more thinking about it, or no, one has thought enough about it. Just brings headaches or endless more ruminations with no relief. Maybe the experience of people here, some of them, all of them. I know it very well myself. And amazed how thought will just not tire of trying some more thinking. It's conditioned nature to try to figure things out by projecting possibilities and combinations, going over the past. To be aware of that as an interesting phenomenon to be watched. Dispassionately, is that possible? And then starting another way, which is not the way of figuring things out. Maybe as ancient as that. Because records of people sitting, often in these early seals from Asia and Egypt, sitting often among animals or trees. This ancient way of sitting quiet is a different way from figuring things out. And to find out what it is all about being quiet, retreats like these are held in a beautiful spot in the country. Just recently I was asked to write an article for our anniversary issue of the newspaper, and I recollected how it was seeing this land for the first time. I won't say any more, else you won't read the article. So, we're coming to this other question. Why sit quietly? What are we doing this for? Maybe one has done it for a day or two and nothing seems to happen, or at least one thinks nothing is happening. And as long as the evaluative thinking is going on, there is a lack of sensitivity to what's actually happening all the time, which comes more into the foreground, gains in color and depth as the evaluative, expectant thinking becomes tangential, more background. But not, I'm talking here in a very condensed way. This may take a long time. And there's lots of time to do it, is there? Your whole life. Few people here who are as old as I am. Maybe no one. No, I don't think anyone. And for me, it's my whole life. The whole rest of my life. There's no doubt about it. To be here and discover and be quiet, not all the time, do a lot of talking. Without pressure, because that is part of sitting down quietly with one's problem, one's sorrow, or confusion, or fear, pain, anger. Patiently being with it. Although one doesn't maybe know what that means. A lot of people keep asking, what do you mean by being with something? I don't understand it. I can't describe it either very clearly. But when it happens, it's clear. then there is no gulf, chasm between an imagined me observer and my pain or fear. Then there's just what's going on, openly, clearly, and not pressured by expectation to stop, to be overcome, to go away, to conquer. So, as far as I'm concerned, from my experience, it's now as much as one lifetime, generation of sitting quiet retreats. Oh, I do a lot of talking, but does not mean that there isn't the quietness and looking. Mostly with people or in talks, we're talking together as far as I'm concerned, looking at things together. There's no alternative to being quiet with what is upsetting or turmoiling within or outside. The confusion inside, outside, to sit with it, to be with it. Maybe walk quietly with it. I'm not saying it is all in the posture. But to spend quiet time with the way one is at this moment, and not know all about it and try to figure it out, but come into this amazing state, if you will, of not knowing, and realizing that with not knowing, the brain and body quiet down from the habitual thrust of having to know and having to be in the know or figure it out. That pressure is gone, and sitting down quietly, not knowing what will happen, not knowing what is, but therefore in a fresh touch with it that is obscured by all the layers of knowledge about ourselves, all the labels we give ourselves, all the identities we assume that we talked about yesterday at great length. That obscures the simplicity of what is going on moment to moment, here, right now, in grief or fear, sorrow, confusion, hatred. To sit with it, if you will, put it this way. It's always problematical. The language is there. How do you say? It's dualistic. But the being here, as one is at this moment, is not dualistic, unless thought makes it so. Positing for the 10 millionth time that there's an I who has this and has to get through it, is suffering from it, is the victim of it. And to become aware how this way of putting it creates more problems on top of the existing ones is most interesting and enlightening. That's why earlier in the talk the differentiation or distinction was made between just being conscious of something or to be aware. So why sit down quietly? I don't know, I've answered it. And the first response to the person who brought it up was, you gotta find out for yourself. Here we are, we have somehow or other made this decision to come to a place like this. I think the brochures and application forms make it quite clear that it's a retreat in silence. And the person wasn't shocked at this or surprised. It's sort of rather, I had a feeling where it was coming from. One needs to be reinforced in in the meaning of it. Is it really meaningful? Because these thoughts that one may be conscious of but not deeply aware say, what are you doing this for? You could now be in Florida, on the beach, or maybe in the rain. It's supposed to have rain in Florida too. But this bantering or doubt needling of thought. So it's a different thing to be bantered and needled by it and engulfed by doubt, or to see, hey, this is what's going on right now, how interesting. Of course, there'll be another thought saying, no, it's good for you. I've read it's good for you, and other people have had enlightenment by sitting quietly. Maybe I'll get that. So to listen to all of these manifold voices in quietness, without taking sides. That's the beauty of it, letting it all speak and sound off in vast space of not knowing what's right or wrong. I know, voice will come up, well, you talk about vast space, it doesn't feel vast here at all. It feels as tight could be. What is this tightness? In addition to being conscious of it, can there be a deeper awareness of it? What is it really? Not know it as tightness any longer, because that doesn't get anywhere. Because tightness is bad, and tightness wants space. The word implies its own agonies and solutions and so forth. But not to know what this is that is so uncomfortable, or frightening, or frustrating. You see, I have to use words because we're talking with each other. But sitting by oneself, let the words come and go, but they don't tell the truth. They point towards something that I don't know what it is. And maybe by not knowing and quieting down in this not knowing, the gulf and chasm will disappear, and there'll be just this. Not yet known, but alive, throbbing, palpitating, vibrating with the birds. I say with the birds because it's not confined in the way I have thought and everybody else has taught me that this body is. It's just an individual thing, separate from all these other 10 million individual things. Finding out it's not so. In listening quietly, not knowingly, not definingly. I really, truly don't know where this body, whatever it is, ends and the birds begin. The last retreat, one woman who was giving a talk, she said, that bell, when it sounds, it goes right through me. It's not out there. It's right here. Oneself ringing, if you will. You could say, well, wait a minute. I put a tape measure from here to that bell, and it'll read exactly how many meters or feet of distance there is between that bell and you. Okay, so it measures meters or feet, but it cannot possibly measure separation because there is none. Does that sound crazy? It doesn't if it's true for each one of us. And there's no measurable separation between us. It doesn't exist. except in thought, in imagination. I'm not saying that this body is welded or fused with other bodies. Obviously it is not. But the thinking welds it and fuses it with concepts which are not representative of truth. And it is these concepts of thinking that need to be brought or come into awareness and questioned. And separate identity is one of those concepts to which this body-mind is fused as though it was truth. But it's not. Prove it? It's not provable, but it's experienceable by each human being who sort of is interested in this. Although one has to be careful with that. I recall a man coming here a couple of years ago. He never came again, or had never come here before. He felt a little bit out of place. I got that feeling being here, but he wanted to talk with me. I don't know whether I've ever mentioned it in a talk. Some experience that he had had in Vietnam just had come back to him recently. He wanted to talk with somebody about it. Because he remembered that at the time that he spoke about it to people there, then he was not understood. It was thought he had sort of spaced out or gone kooky. He had been on a commando. No one had volunteered for this because the commando was to capture an enemy-infested hill, which had been tried to be captured for a long time. No one volunteered, so people were picked, and he was one of them. And he said he does not recall how he made it to that helicopter. Just one mass or mess of fear and no energy, but somehow or other he got in there, flying this mission. And convinced that he wasn't going to come out of it alive. And then suddenly something changed. I wish I had written it down the way he described it, because his initially clumsy language changed. He described this state of no division, no fear, no enemies, and just love, freedom, no fear. And then he said, the amazing thing was they never found this hill. It didn't exist. It was some mistake. That's all he said. So they returned alive. So he wasn't in a retreat sitting quietly. Although probably for a moment everything dropped. It sometimes happens when we see there's no way out, no solution. What's there then to hold on to? And when nothing is held on to, everything is revealed as it is. And amazingly, what was revealed was love, no enemy. But sitting down quietly today, all that may be revealed is enemies. All the memories and all the stuff. I don't have to list it. It's there for each one of us to be with quietly, spaciously, patiently. And subspace for the crows and jays and snowflakes falling all over the place. Wherever they land, there's just snow, whiteness. We will end here for today.